Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So it kind of started before I even got into programming and that sort of thing, which was in college. Um, I originally wanted to go in as a physicist, and then we had to take mandatory computer programming classes, and I was just kind of blown away by how it's like a mixture of craftsmanship with using your mind and patterns and sort of stuff like that. So, but even before all that, I grew up with a very libertarian dad. And so I would go to libertarian festivals in Vermont and New Hampshire. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I had met someone who was into Bitcoin in like 2010, um, from some technologists up in Burlington. But I just ignored it. And then in college, I tried to make a mining rig. I pooled some money from friends, and we bought three pretty good graphics cards, and then we ran it out of a closet. Uh, and then I met a guy in a career fair who was just like the goofiest person I've ever seen in a formal working career context. And he was running a crypto company. And I learned afterwards that he's one of my mentors now, just life mentors, but he founded DreamHost, which is this old like 90s hosting company still around. And so a crazy story of him is he was the guy who he's very much like he'll go and serial entrepreneur. He'll go and like make a company that may last even 30 days and just try to make something that people will use. And so I don't know if you know about the MT Gox hack, Mount Gox hack in 2013. I think it was 2013. So, okay, back in the day,
Yeah.
um, all like 90+% of Bitcoin trading was being done on this Japanese exchange called MT Gox. And this was happening probably from 2010 to 2013. And it was run by this guy who on Twitter is Magical Tux, Mark Karpellis. And he had purchased it from a guy who originally created MT Gox, which stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. So it was a like battle card trading company out of Japan. And so he buys it, and does not have a security background. I'm not even sure what he did before that. He knew how to program PHP. So he is the sole owner, and like he owns all the coin that is stored on this exchange, and it's 90% of all the trading that's going on in 2013. And back then the price was much lower. It was like 80 or 100 or something, but and before that it was like cents, dollars maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but it turns out that, and it's never really known whether it was an inside job, him running it, or some outside person was running a trading bot that ended up stealing, I think, I might get this number wrong, but I think it was 400,000 Bitcoin just disappears. And there are people who still kind of picket outside MT Gox's offices in Japan because I think it's an inside job and they want to sue Mark Karpellis to get the money back. And there's this whole fight going on. But when MT Gox, right after they learned that it had been hacked, this mentor of mine created Bitcoin Builder, which was acting as like a tunnel in between Mount Gox, where no one could take out their coin, and the rest of the world. So he was saying, I'm going to set up a little mini exchange, which will buy IOUs on MT Gox that I will pay you back in these IOUs, and you give me like real Bitcoin, which can be sent and spent outside the crypto world.
A full-blown hedge.
And this is where like I saw the madness of people do not know what the hell is going on. And I still don't think most people do. But there were people, when you look at the order book of this exchange, the order book is just the collection of buys and sells that people are placing. There would be a order for, let's say, like 1-to-1, let's say. And then right next to that, there'd be an order for 50-to-1. So no one knew the price of this stuff. No one knew. It's a little bit like coronavirus right now, where just no one knows what's going on. And people are crazy. and there was hysteria, and people are trying to like make some pricing mechanism, but it's wild and all over the place. And I would sit there and look at the order book because it was updated dynamically on the website. And I was just like, oh my God, what? Like, no one knows what's going on. And there's still people fighting over NT-GOX, but my mentor who I worked with had made that small company. It was basically just a website. And that's what's cool about the Bitcoin world is it's all digital native. So doesn't really matter where you are. If you can offer a service that provides people value and people want, then there's not much to stop it from taking off. So I saw that working with him. So then I worked with him, and then I got a job at the company that I had 4 years at, called BitGo. And they've kind of morphed in their 4 years, but they're one of the older crypto companies. They're from 2013, and they're trying to solve the problem of Mt. Gox. They don't want another Mt. Gox. This is how they started out. And they used this, at the time, very new protocol upgrade to the Bitcoin network, which allowed you to make a more secure wallet by, instead of having one owner of the wallet, and if that one owner, like Mark Karpeles, was hacked, then all the coins are gone. You now can have 2 owners on it. And that was a huge, and is a huge upgrade from just the regular way, the single key way that people store their funds. So I started working there as an API engineer. I was writing, it's a web-based platform. So you have either a website or you have a JavaScript library that you can embed in your own software, and you use that to create what are called wallets. They're just collections of keys that are storing your Bitcoin. And I can go more into the tech side of that if you'd like. We can talk about that for hours, but it's just where you store your coin. And I was writing the software that allows you to store the coin securely, make sure it's being stored securely, send it in a way that's going to be the least expensive you can send it, but also not expose your key for longer than you need to. And then I did mostly that, but I was also like bopping all around the company. I worked in customer service alongside the developer job for 6 months because I just wanted to learn, like, how do people use us? It's kind of hard to dog food the crypto products unless you're trading every day, which I never did. And then I decided I wanted to travel and work at the same time. And because all I need is my computer and internet, kind of argued back and forth with our CTO, and then eventually got it to work. And I traveled around North and South America and Japan. And I would meet with employees or customers of ours who would need like technical assistance and help setting up their platforms with using us. And so I remember like a fun meeting I had was with one of the biggest porn companies in Japan. And they have this amazing office that they're also kind of like a game company as well. So they have this kind of augmented reality tour of their office where you go in and there are like flamingos and giraffes running along as you walk down the hallway. And then I turn into a room and then we start talking about cold storage, which is a way of writing Bitcoin wallets where they're never connected to the internet. So you don't have that whole enormous attack surface of anyone who's connected to the internet could find a flaw in the layers of software that you have and steal your coin, steal your keys. So we had a conversation. I had a conversation with that about that with their employees, and I would give talks, like technical talks about beginner concepts in blockchain or really new concepts in blockchain. If you ever heard of the Lightning Network, this is one of the most exciting things that's going on in the Bitcoin world right now. I'd say Lightning Network, which is a way of sending fractions of a penny as fast as you can push electrons through a wire and then do a couple cryptographic signatures. So very, very fast, like down to a few milliseconds. So I gave talks on that. And what was really nice was I'd go to Canada. I went and lived in Vancouver. and I didn't know anyone in all of Canada. But because Bitcoin, people who are in this industry and in this kind of life view, which is a very like decentralize all the things, reduce the amount of power people have, and open up the world to digital payments. There's like a lot of people who I could meet and be instantly connect with and become friends with. So I have friends from all of these countries that I visited, who I keep in touch with about Bitcoin stuff and Bitcoin advancements. And they're also just really interesting people.
Now, what do you feel like is in your background? I mean, you talked about it a little bit with saying that you went between Vermont and New Hampshire, going to libertarian festivals. But what kind of attracted you to getting involved in coding for?
Sorry,
for
coding
crypto?
or
Yeah.
crypto?
Well, just crypto. I mean, obviously, coding is the first step, but then I'm curious, like how you've talked a little bit about your trajectory, but was there an inflection point where you're just like, oh yeah, man, this is where I want to go?
I think I will always remember this point, where I kind of feel like it's like the starting point where I was like, huh, this is weird. I was telling you about that Mount Gox hack. So I was in junior year at that time, and I was doing some problem at like 2 a.m. and on my own in some lab at college. And I was reading the forums as that hack was going on, and it was just utter madness and conspiracy theories up the wazoo, and no one knew what was going on. And I think I'm a pretty high risk individual in terms of like trying something really new, and if it doesn't work out, then that's okay. Like I'm just dumb.
Move on.
Which I really don't know that much, so I just accept. I'm just dumb. Like that was a bad decision. I was the last 4 months of my life, I moved to New Zealand, and I was trying to manage a hostel in New Zealand, a backpacker hostel, and that failed pretty horribly. I was really bad at that, but I just kind of tried these things because, like,
why not?
Life is short. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a kind of risk averseness. I think a lot of people would like brush off doing Bitcoin stuff because it's too hypey and fatty, which it is very like Gartner's hype curve, total up the wazoo. But then also more grounded in like how I actually thought and what I'm interested in. I think crypto is mainly about these three concepts of economics, computer science, and kind of behavioral economics, or like game theory. And those three things are three of the most things I'm most interested in from like a, I don't know, idea study point. So I would just read about this stuff for fun on my own. And then I went and worked for this company, and it was a profitable company, so I got paid to do it. And by the end, when I was, so I went to Japan, and then I went back from Japan in 2018 spring, and I became a technical lead on the coins team, it was called. So it's basically like within the crypto company, the people who really know the crypto. And I would just read white papers because part of my job was to onboard new cryptocurrencies and figure out how to take their view of what a coin is, what a cryptocurrency is, and bring it into our system. So I needed to learn like at sometimes a byte level, like how are these cryptocurrencies working? And what's their game theory? Are they okay to use? Do they have open source or closed source technologies? If they were all closed source, we would be like, we can't run this in our system.
Yeah.
I worked with one of the smartest, most knowledgeable security people, and just in general people I've ever met. And working with him was just like, he opened my eyes to how paranoid you can be, and how state actors will do, like, they will go to great lengths to try to learn something about your system. So there's this thing called a side channel attack, where you can actually measure the frequencies given off by your CPU. And this is something that your computer is doing, I don't know, every millisecond or some small amount of time. It's emitting wavelengths. And you can think of it as down at the programming code level, if you add 1 versus you add a 2, that emits a different wave. And because of these signatures, you can tell, through various means, you can read off like the bits in a 256-bit key, which may be worth millions of dollars if that coin holds
it's exploited.
many Bitcoin. So, and the reason I bring that up is also just curiosity, which I think a lot of people in the tech world exhibit. I'm just like really interested in it, and it's fun for me to sit down and read about it. So kind of nerdy in that regard, I guess, but yeah.
Now, what are your, because I'm realizing we might need to spin this whole project to be a 1 degree of Vermont thesis. Like what's the Vermont connection when it comes down to it? Did you, because I don't know, like, did you grow up here, or obviously you're here now?
I was born in Springfield.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't even realize that. Okay.
Yeah, my mom worked at Springfield Hospital. And I'm in Woodstock right now. That's where I grew up.
Oh, awesome.
Plymouth and Woodstock.
Yep.
But in terms of the Bitcoin and crypto world, and in programming world, it would have to be those. I guess Vermont kind of has a not stereotype, but like, the crazy hippie kind of commune thing. I didn't go to the communes, but it definitely would have been hard to go to those libertarian meetups if I was in the middle of, like, I don't know, many other states, middle of New York City. They just don't do that there. So there's allowed this kind of alternative festival, alternative ideas to come up. And because of that, I was exposed early to it, and I was more welcoming to crazy, weird crypto people who want to like screw the Fed and go out back to the gold or digital gold or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you see as your kind of your next step? I mean, we talked a little bit about, how you have freedom to choose location, but like what is it? Is it the Lightning Network stuff that's really gets you interested, or is there something specifically going on that you're looking to chase after?
So there is, but it's not in the crypto world. I kind of had a realization where I had thought it would move along a lot faster than it has. And then there's also elements of where, like, one of the scenarios where Bitcoin does really well is the world economy collapses, dollar is no longer supreme, and we don't have any trust in the financial system. And so we need to fall back to a system that thrives when there is no trust, which is Bitcoin. And there's another alternative or potential where Bitcoin does really well, which is where there's like, Bitcoin is a really good native payment currency for the web. So you have this idea of like autonomous software agents, programs that are running and using Bitcoin to dynamically price things at very fast speeds with, for instance, Lightning Network. So you could do that for like energy markets or something like that. But I think probably the governments will come out with a digital first currency first, and then we'll just use that. So I'm kind of like waiting for things to change or evolve in crypto. There's still things moving very fast. Like there's this whole decentralized finance concept, which is kind of like those autonomous agents trading with each other, but I'm not as interested in like finance.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be a teacher. I'm trying to go out and work for a coding boot camp. I've had a couple friends drastically change their lives by going and working at these boot camps. They were college dropouts, and then they were looking for something to do and learn how to program. So they go and worked at those. And I just looked at that and was like, wow, if I didn't like my job, wanted to make more money, just wanted to change my life, I would go to this coding boot camp called 42, which is over in California. And it's a free coding boot camp that lasts anywhere from 1 to 2 years. Many people drop out early because they get a job. And it's free. They pay for your living. They pay for the boot camp. You just have to pay for food. And it's very intense.
Who's behind it? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a guy named Xavier. He's kind of like Steve Jobs, but he is from France. He is a billionaire telecommunications founder. Let me look it up. But he has a school in France called 42, and they brought it to Silicon Valley because that's kind of like the next best place. I guess they chose to make it. So I don't know if I can go work there, but yeah, I would like to teach, which is how I originally heard about BRIC, because a man named Jason Drubico had told me about you guys, and maybe there'd be something to do with teaching. And he also said some crypto guys were working here, but I don't know if that's true or not.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the hills. That's all I can say. Is fascinating. A lot of as the word gets out, I think there hasn't really been a resource like what we're trying to spin up in this region. That is, to your point, it's like part of the culture is do cool stuff, and if you fail, it's all good.
Yeah.
As opposed to what I think prevailing culture has been, where it's like, work hard and grind it out, and kind of suffer more.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And
it's like,
why
do that?
Or what is it? A Protestant work ethic sort of self grind there.
Yeah. And it's hopefully we can change that, make it easier, because to your point, life's too short. Like, if you're doing something and you're at a point where it's not viable. I mean, we all know that there's the crazy part too of, if you have a good idea and you believe in it so much and it's your passion, grind it out, and as long as it's not burning you out. But the minute you hit that point where it's too much work, right? It's then it's like, okay, then shift, pivot, do whatever the buzzword of the day is, and
but be smart and try something new.
But I think that's the cool thing about what's happening. So obviously, having you talking tonight and hearing about this, but you can just, as you know, you can feel it, especially when you're involved in organizations that have momentum, and you feel the momentum kind of, and you feel it building, and that's kind of, I don't know, I'll defer to Chris on it too, but I'm definitely feeling it. Like, all these people are starting to inquire about things, and we're just trying stuff, right? Everything and anything that kind of fits the culture of, we're doing gaming nights and stuff like that, which I think is super cool, because to your point of, what are some of those three elements in the world that,
game theory and
game theory,
science.
and looking at spinning up all sorts of, it's not just come in and code and do work. It's have all these peripheral kind of lifestyle and cultural things.
If it's just that, I don't know if it'll work, because you need kind of a spirit to it. You need to feel like you can go to a place and, like, I'm going to smile when I go there. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to have a good time. Hey, Corey.
Cool.
Welcome. You've been here a while, but didn't say hey.
Hey, Alex.
Hey.
So anyway, I know on my end, this is a good first start. I have a feeling because we just spun this around so quickly with everything crazy going on, that was like, hey, let's start to document cool stuff and see where this thing goes. And I don't know if Chris told you earlier, Alex, but when you guys spoke, but we're already getting like crazy inbound requests from people being like, hey, can we use this? Or, hey, can we syndicate this? And it's like, yeah, great. Like, just get online and have people connect and tell stories and surface what's going on. Because the one thing that, to your point of being able to come in and smile every day with what you're doing, is, all this cool stuff's going on around us. There's, Vermont is so resourceful, and there's so many cool people that have come out of it, but no one really knows.
Yeah.
Everyone's like this whole, especially in the tech and business side, it's like getting back to the ethic part of just grind it out and don't you know don't say anything, just work hard and keep your head down. We're kind of like, no, let's get everyone's heads up and aware of like all these resources you have around you and all these people doing cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna start telling friends of mine who I grew up with, and a lot of us left Vermont because we have conversations where we want to go back to Vermont because it's beautiful and it's where we grew up and it's just home. But yeah, there's that pervasive. I still feel it feeling of like there's not there's no jobs. I can get paid more elsewhere. So
Yeah.
conquering that is going to be there. There could be, never say there will be, but there could be some sigmoid change where you just hit it enough people and long enough that it gets switches in people's heads.
Yeah, I think the tough thing is that the economics are always going to be different up here. I think there are a lot, and that's part of the point. Some of the things we're becoming more aware of. There's a lot more jobs than people realize, but it's finding them, and not only finding them, but from a Vermont perspective, having grown up in Vermont, right? A lot of us can say, hey, there's an inherent lifestyle equation that comes into what you're doing. But if you're from a native of one of the urban areas or outside of Vermont, and you've been working and making good coin, doing whatever job you're doing, but you want to change lifestyle, you want a different balance, and you come up to Vermont and you expect to have an equivalent kind of pay scale for skills, it's untenable up here right now, just because you don't have that critical mass unless you're up in Burlington. I would say Burlington, you're pretty close, but anything, I'm going to take any chance I can get with PR to use our hashtag SOMO, which is just, south of Montpelier. It's, that you just, it's a
That's
different
great.
world, and the
Here is
expectations are
so much
different.
better than SOMO.
Yeah. But, so anyway, yeah.
I mean, outside of straight up just remote work, I completely agree with you. I mean, I was also born in Springfield, so I caught that bit in there that you were just saying, Alex. Living back here now, but I have a couple of friends that are either in New Hampshire or Vermont that are full-time remote employees of like Apple or other big kind of tech entities, and that's one of the few kind of versions that you see. But when you're talking the pay inequity.
Yeah, when there's not that many companies like that.
Yeah, remote work allows you to have the exception to the rule, right? If you can get in, but the
Right.
catch-22 is normally you have to have paid your dues urban, right? Or
a lot more companies in the U.S. and even international are taking on remote straight out the gate. I've worked with a couple of people just reviewing their portfolios on code and things like that for jobs in like Sweden and a couple other countries where you can get remote gigs basically living anywhere, as long as you can show that you are interested in the way that they do work. That's one of the biggest things that you're seeing in software is just the trends more as to how teams work together versus having the upfront expertise.
Are you working remote now?
So
you're in office?
I am remote as of last week.
Yeah. Hard question, right? Qualify the question.
It was actually really interesting. So I work for Hypertherm.
Yep.
So I've been with them for about 8 years. 6 years of that's been software, and I did software before going to them to begin with. Our team that I work on has been pushing the envelope for probably, I'd say, at least a year and a half, 2 years, as far as remote work. Prior to that, we were bringing on board Scrum processes and just different, more radical ways of doing software. Radical for the region, not radical for the industry. I mean, extreme programming has been around since the 70s, so this isn't new stuff. but it was very new to Hypertherm. And so we've really been kind of aggressively pushing and changing the teams there. So I'm a certified Scrum Master. My kind of passion is around, at least in the workplace, is around developing teams, how people work together, how people are open and vulnerable and authentic with each other.
Yeah.
And then just rapid prototyping, like what you were saying before about just try things, figure it out. If it doesn't work, move on. I mean, that's entirely like the foundation of what I push for software design. And then a more kind of even interesting overlap, you were talking about game theory and stuff like that. For probably about the last like 8 or 9 years, I've worked with designers and publishers in the board game space to do prototyping and consulting on game design.
Oh, this is the dream job.
Well,
I've thought about
unfortunately,
writing.
Nobody can make a living doing it.
Yeah.
Almost everybody I know works a full-time job, even if they're a designer or solo publisher. But I actually spent a bunch of time studying like game theory, science and psychology of gaming. It's like one of my personal hobbies. So that was a really interesting overlap when you mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we hope to get Corey on here for a future community chat to talk about game theory and his experience there.
Looking forward to it. I know so much less than I want to know.